Hey guys, we're going to try a short version of the class from Sunday, the class on anti-Semitism, why the Jews. So let's share my screen. There it is. Didn't start it. Okay, hopefully this will work out. Let's go back. Okay, so what did we say on Sunday? We said, here's 7 reasons that academics, historians have claimed what is the cause of anti-Semitism, trying to understand it. It's a puzzle. Why does everyone hate the Jews? Right? We have all the money. We think we're better than everyone else. They have to blame somebody because of it, Israel and Palestine. We're different. We kill Jesus, or it's just racism. Right? These are the 7 reasons that have been brought up. Let's go through each of them and really show you that they're not the real reason. Just like in this Calvin and Hobbes comic, why didn't you do your homework? Because of aliens, dinosaurs, whatever. That's just an excuse. The real reason he was chilling watching TV. So too, when we show that each of these claimed causes for anti-Semitism, even when they don't exist, yet anti-Semitism persists, can't be the real reason. And also a few little more tidbits. So economic theory, like we see in medieval artwork, the idea of Jews as moneylenders and having all the money. Maybe historians say, you know why people hate Jews? Because Jews were always so wealthy. They were always so powerful economically, and people resent that. Like even one of my favorite thinkers, Thomas Sowell, talks about this as middleman theory. This doesn't really pan out from a Jewish perspective because, first of all, throughout the vast majority of our history, Jews were quite poor, right? The idea, like the Pale of Settlement in Russia and other places, we couldn't own businesses, couldn't own land, couldn't really create a lot of wealth. And yet, even with tremendous Jewish poverty, anti-Semitism still existed. It's not a very good reason then. What about chosen people theory? We think we're better than everyone else. That's why they hate us. So first of all, even in the multiple places in our history, most famously recently in Germany before World War II, where the Jews got up and said, Berlin is our Jerusalem. And like the Reform Jewish movement, which started in Germany, which removed all references to the temple, to Mashiach, to return to Israel. We're just Germans of the Jewish faith. We're not any chosen. We're not any different, right? We'll talk about differences more later. And yet, obviously, anti-Semitism persisted. And what about the fact that every group in history thinks that they're special and better, whether it's Christians, Muslims, Japanese, Chinese, or anyone else you could imagine? And yet we don't see massive hatred of other peoples that have, or every other peoples that have thought they're special or chosen in some way. So this can't be the true reason for anti-Semitism. What about scapegoat theory? We have to blame somebody for the problems of society. Like, Hitler, his name should be erased. Who gets up and says, it's the Jews' fault. And the Germans are like, oh, really? Oh, wow, the Jews. Like what? It came out of nowhere? There's a long history of anti-Semitism in Germany, going back to at least to the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. I think it's the 16th century, maybe early 17th. Yeah, you can Google exactly when it happened, a few hundred years ago. On top of that, you can't just like spin the wheel of hatred and just pick somebody randomly, and that's a great scapegoat. Because if you would have picked, the midgets, nobody would have said, "Yes, the little people, it's their fault." No, it's ridiculous. And a scapegoat theory doesn't account for all the universality, intensity, and other unique aspects of anti-Semitism. What about specifically Christian anti-Semitism? And although the Muslims have borrowed some of these ideas later on in history, right? So, oh, it's because we killed Jesus and all the other things that go along with that. Well, first of all, according to Christianity, we didn't kill him. In fact, according to Christianity, it's good that he died because then now we can go to heaven after we die. So maybe they should be thanking us. But really, we didn't kill him anyway. So why are we getting blamed? On top of that, there's so many bizarre aspects of Christian anti-Semitism. Like the blood libel. They say that Jews have taken the blood of Christians and now more recently in history, Muslim children, and used them to make our matzahs and hamantashen and bathe in their blood because of hemorrhoids, whatever. A lot of strange things that they've claimed for this, as we see in some of this medieval artwork. But Jews are not even allowed to eat blood. The Torah forbids blood to us. So the whole thing is just very, very bizarre. It caused a lot of death and destruction for us over the centuries. Or whether it's the host, desecration of the host. Whereas in Christianity, they have these wafers, communion wafers, and they claim that Jews would take these wafers from the churches and torture them to ritually recreate the torture and death of Jesus. Thousands of our people over the years were killed for this claim. It sounds hysterical that we got killed for torturing crackers, but in fact, that is exactly what happened. And it's just one bizarre claim after another. The most non-kosher animal of all, you would say, probably, is the pig. So inevitably, the pig is the number one animal associated with the Jews by anti-Semites. Here we have the pictures of the Judensau, the Jewish pig, and as some of the bizarre artwork as you can see here. Okay, what about Jews are outsiders, right? Yeah, here we have nice pictures of Yemenite Jews, Bukharian kids, Hasidic rabbis. We look different than the people around us. But even when we went out of our way not to look different than the people around us, most famously in relatively recent history, the Dreyfus affair, where a French Jew, Alfred Dreyfus, became an officer in the French military and was accused of spying for the Germans. And the crowds that were crying for his death, they weren't crying death to the Germans. They weren't crying death to the spies. They were crying death to the Jews. So even if we tried to look and act like everyone else, this did nothing to alleviate anti-Semitism. In fact, it maybe even made it worse. What about race? That's of course bizarre, because every single person on the screen here you see is Jewish. What race are we? You can convert to become a Jew. You cannot convert to become a race. So racism has absolutely nothing to do. We see this in modern America. Many anti-Semites are complaining about those white colonialists in Israel. The majority of the Jews who live in Israel are not white. The majority of the Jews who live in Israel are Sephardi, which means they're North African or Middle Eastern, Persian, Iraqi, etc. And therefore they would what you would call in modern racist theory brown. So just one nonsensical claim after another. None of these is a true reason for anti-Semitism from a Jewish perspective or from just a rational perspective. So what does Judaism actually say? One of the best places to begin is not even from a religious Jew, but from Anne Frank, the famous diary of Anne Frank from World War II. And she says, maybe it's from our religion, which the world and all peoples learn good. And for that reason only do we now suffer. She was right on the money, despite the fact that when some secular Jews tried to recreate a Broadway play from her diary, they changed this amazing paragraph into, well, one day it's one group and the next day another. Completely and utterly, I think maybe maliciously, missing the point that it's really the Jewish message, the Torah itself, the people of God. That is why anti-Semites hate us. And who can we learn this even best from? How about the greatest anti-Semite perhaps of the modern era, Adolf Hitler? This is what Hitler says about himself. They refer to us as uneducated barbarians. Yes, we are barbarians. It's an honorable title to us. The Ten Commandments have lost their validity. Conscience is a Jewish invention. It's a blemish like circumcision. These are all Torah values that he's attacking. Right here, there's no morality when a lion kills a zebra, right? It's just nature. And according to the Nazis and those like them, that's exactly how human beings are. Here you see a famous picture. I believe it's titled The Last Jew of Kishinev, where they sat around and brought out their cameras and showed the execution of the last Jew in this area of Russia. And as Hitler and the social Darwinists and Nazis and others have said, this is exactly how nature works. The strong conquer the weak. And the fact that the Jews try to say that take care of the widow and the orphan and the sick, etc., actually weakens humanity. That's why we hate the Jews so much. And the rabbis said this almost 2,000 years ago. In the Talmud, they say, from the time of Mount Sinai, when the Torah came into the world, Sinah, hatred, Sinah, which is linguistically related to the word Sinai, right? That the message that the Jews brought in, that, and the hatred of that message. At the end of the day, the anti-Semite really hates God and his Torah. You can't kill God. But if you kill his messenger and his message, it's the next best thing. These tremendous values, which we will talk about later on in another class, which are really Torah values that are brought into the world of monotheism, of family values, of peace, justice, freedom, charity, etc., etc., etc. At the core, anti-Semites, of course, there are tons of what Lenin, another great anti-Semite, would have called useful idiots, people who just follow the masses and they have jealousy and they're petty and they just want power, etc., etc. But the intelligent thinking anti-Semites, the ones who, actually start up the movements and then run them, they understand what they're really fighting against, which is our values and our message, which is the Torah and the different kind of world versus the pagan, polytheistic, atheistic world that they're trying to create. As Hermann Rauschnig in his book From the Beast from the Abyss writes, it is against their own insoluble problem of being human that the dull and base in humanity are in revolt in anti-Semitism. Judaism, nevertheless, together with Hellenism and Christianity, is an inalienable component of our Christian Western civilization, the eternal, quote, call to Sinai, against which humanity again and again rebels. Aldous Huxley, in his book From Confessions of an Atheist, writes, I had motives for not wanting the world to have meaning. Consequently, I assumed that it had none. For myself, the philosophy of meaninglessness was essentially an instrument of liberation from a certain system of morality. We objected to the morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom. So a lot of reasons why anti-Semitism rises to the forefront. It's fine. As Dennis Prager, he should live and be well and recover from his injury, and Joseph Telushkin wrote in their book, Why the Jews? The Reason for Anti-Semitism. From its earliest days, the raison d'etre of Judaism has been to change the world for the better. This attempt to change the world, to challenge the gods, small g, religious or secular, of the societies around them, and to make moral demands upon others has constantly been a source of tension between Jews and non-Jews. We now understand why so many non-Jews have regarded the mere existence of Jews, no matter how few, as terribly threatening. The mere existence of Jews with their different values and allegiances constituted a threat to the prevailing order. Okay, a lot of stuff to think about here. Thank you for coming to the class. Those of you who didn't make it and only saw this review, I hope to see you next time, and I hope you learned something even from this short version of the class. Thank you very much.